criteria and associated operational measures to be decided first. That is step number one. And of course, number two, you must also decide on the weights, right, for each and every criteria. Right, we want to formally discuss and decide how important are these criteria that you have decided, right? Because every criteria may have different level of importance, right? For instance, sales performance can be important, very important, and then profitability can be even more important, and then the attitude can be moderately important, for example, and then the succession plan, according to certain people, may not be so important. So you can see that the various criteria that you have used may have different level of importance, right? And you can actually come up with more systematic evaluation system like this one that I've shown you. You may use a matrix. With the left column, you have the performance criteria, namely, let's say the sales, the attitudes, the profitability, the selling capability, the succession, and so on. So different channel manager, they have different criteria that they have agreed upon. Of course, this criteria need to discuss with the channel members and also the facilitating agents. That will be better, right? You as a producer, you talk to the manufacturers, the retailers, and also the other facilitating agents to decide on the criteria, and also so that they will have this sense of ownership. They also will be alert that these are the areas that they will be evaluated. So it is good to have these collective decisions as what performance criteria should be used or will be used to evaluate the channel members' performance from time to time. So if they agree, you also agree, then they actually you will be actually working towards these performance goals, right? And the second column, you can see the weights, basically the relative importance of this criteria. 0 means totally not important. 1 means totally important. So it varies from 0 to 1. So, but add up to be 1, okay? For example, sales performance 0.2, meaning it contributes 20% of the entire weightage. Attitude, for instance, 25%. Profitability, let's say 20%. Capability, let's say 15%. Succession, let's say 10%. Right? So you may have a few criteria. This depends on the channel manager working with the other channel participants, right? As I say. So if these are the 5 criteria agreed, so you will use these 5 criteria. Sometimes you may have more. You may have, let's say, 6 or 7. But it is quite common that we don't have more than 10, right? So with that, you can carry out your performance evaluation from time to time. You may have a specific kind of, let's say, questionnaire with specific indicators for sales, a few attitudes, you may have a few, or even sometimes can be 20 or 30 items to evaluate them. Profitability, you may have a few indicators. Capability, you may have a few, and so on, right? So sometimes it can be just a few criteria like this. Sometimes it can be a computations of various mechanisms to arrive at, let's say, the score for the attitude. But let's say generally we just use these 5 criteria first, and then the performance is evaluated using this rating scale of, let's say, 1 to 10, right? So it depends on the channel manager or the well-trained assessors to evaluate the sales, right? So if the performance is very good, you may have assigned 8 for the sales performance. The attitude may be assigned 7. If the profitability is very good, then you can assign 9, and so on, right? And so on and so forth, right? Then you can actually have this weighted score of the performance times the weightage of that particular criteria. For instance, the sales, the weightage is 0.2 times the performance is 8. then the weighted score for sales is 1.6, right? Same goes to other criteria. Then you can compute the weighted score respectively, and you can total up the entire performance, which is 7.4 in this case out of 10. Remember, 10 is the perfect score. So this particular channel member, for example, is having the score of 7.4 based on these 5 criteria. So you can see that for this channel member, the score is 74%, right, out of 100%. So that is just for one channel member. If you have 100 channel members, for instance, right, then 100 channel members will be assessed using this. Then you can actually see the performance of each and every channel member. So you as a channel manager, then you can compare which channel member is performing the best, right, and which channel member is performing the least, right, the poorest, and then on which aspect. So you can actually manage them more systematically and more objectively, of course, based on this criteria. And some of the, of course, channel manager, we like to, let's say, reward the channel members. So it can be based on this kind of multiple criteria combined formally approach to reward them, right? Let's say the top 3 channel members will be receiving certain awards and so on, right? It is quite common for sales agents and for retailers to have this kind of annual assessment, right? That they can actually reward the channel members accordingly. So you find that this multiple criteria combined formally can be quite a objective and systematic way of evaluating them. But having said that, the performance criteria must be agreed upon and must be quite a good set of performance criteria, because you are going to use this from time to time. For instance, this attitude, for instance, in order to assess the attitude of the channel member like wholesaler, sometimes it can be not easy. So channel manager or the marketing manager may come up with a very nice questionnaire, for example, consisting of, let's say, maybe 20 questions. Design a nice, let's say, online questionnaires or offline questionnaires that the wholesaler may be using, and ask the employees to key in online. Right now, it's very easy with Google Form and so on. They can just key in the questionnaires to assess the attitude, and then the Google Form can be just compiled by the channel manager or the marketing researchers of the manufacturers. They can do that to know the attitude of the channel members across the nations or even across the entire globe, to know the attitudes of the employees or the sales force or the channel member of that organization.